Over the course of the game, Clive Rodsfield collects the powers of every Eikon. No Leviathan though. Maybe next time, buddy. See you in the DLCs. Are we sure finding this guy was a good idea? Final Fantasy XVI is currently my favorite game in existence. The combat is 10 out of 10, the story and characters are endlessly lovable, and the strengths of the game are enough to compensate for its shortcomings. I've given endless praise to it in no less than 3 different videos by now, and this one makes for the iconic quartet. The game got 2 DLCs, Echoes of the Fallen, which basically consisted of a great new dungeon with a fine story, cool lore, great new accessories, and an absolutely insane boss fight, totaling about 3 hours if you beat it on the first try with no deaths. The Rising Tide is the second DLC, and by far the bigger one, centering around Clive and friends travelling to free the dominant of Leviathan, the long missing 8th Eikon. Well, the 8th one that's actually meant to exist anyway. We get a whole new area of the world to run around and explore, new enemies to fight, a lot more story, more weapons, 2 new sets of iconic powers, and of course, some more awesome bosses. Yes, the Final Fantasy XVI boss ranking is going to happen, but that's a topic for another day. On the whole, the Rising Tide DLC is fantastic. It's full of more of what I love about the game. Awesome spectacle in combat, beautiful music, and a story I can't get enough of. I do have a couple of gripes with the DLC, but we can get to those in due time. For now, let's dive right in, and swim amongst the rising tide. Sorry. The biggest deal about this DLC is the new area of Valisthea, Mysidia. After spending several hours at this point under sunless, ugly purple skies thanks to Ultima's Primogenesis, we cross through a magic glamour wall into beautiful Mysidia, a green and thriving land under a clear blue sky, and the visuals are stunning. Maybe it's just due to the contrast of what we've been under for so long, but it is awesome to just walk in pure sunlight again. Admittedly, it is just an illusion in universe, but the effort is most certainly appreciated. It's also cool to see what the Northern Territories look like before being consumed by the Blight, seeing as this is where Jill originally came from. The primary settlement, called Haven, is a peaceful village with nice architecture, and surprisingly, no supernatural racism. Everywhere you go in Valisthea, at least before the final couple of chapters when humanity starts to unite, is full of discrimination, slavery, and people only looking out for themselves at the expense of others. But coming here to Haven and seeing people being pleasant and helpful not only to each other and our protagonists, but also to bearers, was really cool to see, and it serves as in-universe reinforcement that Clive's goal of building a better world is still ambitious, but it is possible to achieve. The surrounding woodlands of Haven are just that, woodlands, covered in some shipwrecks that were put there due to an undisclosed incident. And it has beautiful views of the ocean from time to time. The enemy variety in this land it's alright. It has big turtles, big cats, and a new staple from the Final Fantasy series, Tonberries. These guys are actually pretty fun to fight, especially the Tonberry King, and are a great addition to the enemy roster of Final Fantasy XVI. The biggest standout part of this area is this, a giant suspended in time wave that has been visible since the base game, and now we finally get to learn the secrets behind it. But before all of that, would you like to do these side quests? Let's be honest, expecting them to revamp these side quests into anything other than glorified fetch and or kill quests was a bit too ambitious, but I was never that critical of the side quests in the base game, and I will maintain that energy here. The first couple quests are no combat walk and talk missions, just to unlock the smith and the store for you, but the rest of the quests with actual combat in them are more of the same. Walk here, kill this guy, maybe collect an ingredient, and then head back, which has been made far easier thanks to the Return to Quest Giver teleport the game has introduced with the patch they released alongside the DLC. The attractive part to these quests is the story behind them, as these missions have always been mainly window dressing for additional lore and story. We get to fight against the Tonberry King, learning about the Tonberries being bestowers of curses and also about the Holy Empire's religious exterminations, which plays in part to the people of Mysidia and their backstory. We get to learn more about the Witch of the North, a former dominant of Shiva that I haven't told you about yet. We get to help bring Walius into the Haven family by way of a wholesome ritual. It's all very cool stuff, and while I do acknowledge the tedium, I also enjoy it so I can handwave it. Oh, who's Walius? the dominance of Leviathan. I should probably mention him by now, huh? This is the final spoiler warning of this video, because I'm not going to be vague from this point out. Clive and friends get a letter from Shula, a woman from Mysidia, who's seeking his help in freeing the dominant of Leviathan. No, it's not actually this girl. It's Wellius, a baby. Yes, a baby dominant. We travel to Mysidia and promptly get to saving him, as he's been frozen in time for 80 years, conscious in a way since the very first day, which is exactly the kind of light-hearted lore we expect from the wonderful world of Final Fantasy XVI. The people of Mysidia 80ish years ago wanted to create a new Mother Crystal. Yes, another fucking crystal. By forcing the newborn dominant of Leviathan to prime, amassing huge amounts of ether, then using a spell of chronomancy to freeze them in time forever, letting them utilize all that ether. All while the baby is conscious and terrified for the entire time. False salvation for their people at the cost of an innocent child's life. The ritual failed because Leviathan got mad, and they used the spell to freeze him and the giant wave in place before he could destroy them, leaving Wellius to suffer. Now Shula wants to atone for the sins of her ancestors, and she needs Clive's help to do it, seeing as Leviathan's probably going to be mad when he wakes up, and we do have some experience taking down dominance at this point. After travelling to this beautiful land and getting acquainted with the village and its people, we pay a visit to the little lad, where Clive does what Clive does best, and we gain another Eikon's power. The power of Leviathan. You may be wondering, how is it?
I'm back. I'll handle this.
It's pretty good. Leviathan is a solid Eikon with a lot of cool utility. It's entirely focused on ranged attacks, with 3 really good moves and 1 pretty decent one, with the iconic feat being solidly B tier, at least in my opinion. With all that said and done, it's now time to visit the Heir of Hours, the arcade replayable stage of this DLC. It's a very fun level, ranking among the best in the game, with a decent mini-boss in this Fafnir reskin, now with unique environmental hazard breath attacks, and an absolutely awesome final fight with a Timekeeper Knight. This knight was the guardian of the witch who taught the Mysidians the spell of chronomancy, as thanks for them comforting her during her final days alive as she succumbed to the curse, and the witch was a former dominant of Shiva, called XVI. The knight was her faithful companion, and he remains 80 years later bound to her ether, protecting her spell. This guy can freeze time, he summons projectile weapons, displays masterful sword techniques. Basically, he's everything cool I love about fictional characters rolled into one character, and I hold him up as one of the best bosses in the entire game. However, we best him nonetheless. The knight is defeated. Jill then uses her powers to help Shula free Wellius. And just like that, the day and the baby are both saved. Nothing else can go wrong.
Free once more. Leviathan, our most profaned fragment.
Oh god damn it. Literally. You didn't think we'd explore the mysteries of Leviathan without getting a chance to deck him in the face, did you? The Eikon fight with Leviathan is incredible, easily one of the best in the game, probably the best in terms of pure mechanics. This sea snake is huge, can fly, and has mastery over water. Not the best opponent for the fire Eikon with no wings to fight. We start by falling through a giant water spout as Leviathan flies around, charging you and blasting you with water attacks, which is definitely painful thanks to the quick emergences and very high damage on Final Fantasy mode, leading to many firelights being consumed before we're even done with phase 1. After his health is whittled down, we end up in this gorgeous arena on the open ocean where we're Jesusing? Somehow? I don't care much for the semantics, because the rest of the fight is absolutely incredible. Leviathan brings an onslaught of tail swipes and bites mixed with powerful aquatic lasers and AoEs that have to be jump dashed over or precision dodged through. When they said they wanted to make Leviathan the most difficult Eikon battle, they weren't kidding, and we're only up to the second phase, out of 4. Next is the DPS test, and on Final Fantasy mode, this really is a test. Bringing down this purple meter is not easy, even when burning through all your super moves as quickly as possible. It requires aerial attacks, constant full combos, and avoiding basically every attack he throws at you while building the gauge. I failed the first time and died, and failed the second time and actually healed through the damage, but the villagers behind me still perished. Whoops. But on the third time, I succeeded. I got the stagger, and I entered into phase 3. And goddamn, it was so satisfying. Not only because the fight amped up the spectacle and mechanics, but also because of the music. I never watched Final Fantasy XVI trailers, so I didn't know of the existence of this track, so when I heard it in the DLC trailer, I was instantly in love, and to hear it as the official boss theme of Leviathan was an epic surprise, to such an extent I audibly cheered. Admittedly, I quickly died to Leviathan, but then I got to restart from Phase 3 and actually hear this epic music in its entirety. The main leitmotif of this track, Cascade, is the main theme of this entire DLC, and it's so incredibly epic. Soken is a true master of his craft. The fight then proceeds until Leviathan enters Phase 4, churns up the seas and summons an enormous waterspout, one of which I learned you need to wildfire around to avoid. Yes, I learned that the hard way. From this point he goes nuts, summoning every attack he has in quick succession, chaining together attack sequences within seconds and leaving you absolutely no idle time to breathe, and I love it. It's the perfect in-game challenge for an iconic battle, probably my favourite in the game in terms of actual mechanics, and despite it not having the unbridled spectacle of Titan Lost, Bahamut or Ultima Risen, the sheer awesomeness shines through in the quality of the fight. One epic QTE cutscene later, Leviathan is defeated. While Eos is saved, we do the welcoming rite, and Clive and friends then return home to continue preparing to fight Ultima. Hey, why is my Arete stone glowing? Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh yes. That's right, in this DLC we get two sets of iconic powers to play with. The power of Leviathan and a taster of the power of Ultima, wielding divine flames and holy light to bring all our enemies to their knees. This is an awesome surprise addition and a great new power set, with all of these moves being sick as hell. Though it is a bit strange that Ultima would trust us with a small sliver of his power, considering we've been telling him to get lost for the entire game. Oh well, I'm not one to look a gift horse in the mouth. Or a gift, whatever you want to call this thing. That new power is going to come in handy pretty quickly, seeing as we now have the Kairos gate to contend with, the new bloody palace-like mode for Final Fantasy XVI. It's 20 stages, with you getting a rank for each stage based on score, just like the arcade mode, and your rank awarding you with a certain number of enhancement points and boon points, which can be spent in different ways to increase your strength and chances of victory. It's a fun gauntlet, with you getting to fight bosses every 5 stages. Ifrit, Benedicta, Hugo, and Barnabas, all some of the best fights in the game, without any of the cinematics or overly cinematic attacks, for better or worse. This mode is a lot of fun, and pretty challenging, plus it gives you sick rewards, so I recommend everyone to try this mode out. I've beaten it once on my 3rd attempt, and it was a worthwhile experience. There is a secret boss you get for S ranking every stage, but it's just a buffed endgame version of the Infernal Clive fight, which is still awesome, but I was hoping for an actually unique fight. That being said, I will get around to fighting him eventually, once I master this run. And that's about all she wrote for the DLC. Besides a couple new cutscenes for side quests in the base game and some awesome new weapons, that's about all the content I need to cover. So, what are my thoughts? I loved it, on the whole. It's more of what I love about the game already. Epic new powers, brilliant new boss fights and enemies, interesting story and lore, the whole package. That being said, I'd be dishonest if I didn't have a couple critiques. I was hoping for a couple more cutscenes in the DLC story, properly rendered ones too, rather than the characters just standing still and following generic action commands employed by the side quests. I didn't want everything to be pre-rendered, just a little bit more. This is the farewell DLC after all. The side quests also could have been a bit more unique or engaging, with reactions and banter between the party members, especially after I played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which excels at said banter. But that's not a huge complaint. I knew what I was getting in for when I bought this DLC. The final factor I can complain about is the sidelining of Joshua, and especially Jill. I understand that they needed Shula in the party and they wanted to put more focus on her, and I do like her character a lot, but I was really hoping for Jill to get some more focus in the DLC. We're visiting the lands she grew up in, there's new lore drops around Shiva, there's a cool parallel between the Timekeeper Knight and the Witch, and Clive and Jill. The setup was all there. She does get to help undo the spell binding Walius, and it's always cool to have her in the party. But I was hoping for more, even if it was just her and Clive talking about the future they wanted to build together, now that they've seen peace is possible for humanity without the use of crystals, as shown in Haven. And hey, it would have made the ending of the game even more devastating. But those complaints are overshadowed by my biased love for this game and every bit of content we get for it. I've loved Final Fantasy XVI from the second I played it. Never before has a game hooked me in and kept me loving it like this one has, and this DLC lived up to my expectations very well. I've loved speculating about the lore, honing my skills in the arcade mode, cosplaying as Clive Rosfield, admiring the legendary spectacle and music every time I play, and just experiencing everything this legendary game has to offer time and time again. It's heartbreaking to say goodbye to this world and these characters that I've come to love so dearly, but all good things eventually come to an end. And hey, I'm sure I'll get plenty of enjoyment out of it for years to come. If this truly is the end for Final Fantasy XVI, then I'm honoured to have been a part of this journey. Thank you Square Enix, thank you Ben Starr, thank you Naoki Yoshida, thank you Final Fantasy XVI, and thank you all for watching.